Welcome to Gender A Wider Lens, exclusive content for our listener community.
In these bonus episodes, we're going to dive even deeper into the issues surrounding gender in today's culture. Some weeks we'll respond to listener Q&As.
And we'll also be introducing a series called Dinner Party Conversations. And here we start grappling with the difficult question, such as how do we talk to people in real life about gender? And we also dive a bit deeper into topics that we touched on in the full episode.
Here is the bonus conversation. All right, everyone, we're back with Corinna Cohn, and we have a question. Multiple questions. First being, how the heck do you talk about gender IRL, offline, with people in the flesh?
How do you talk about it? Well,
no, how do you talk about it?
How do I talk about it? Well,
when you're out in public and people don't actually know you're trans and or whatever, or I don't know if they do or they don't, but how do you navigate if it comes up?
Gosh, with strangers? So here's the thing. There are, especially lately, I've been adopting more androgynous dressing styles. So oftentimes that's just like a t-shirt and jeans or whatever. And if people see me and they call me he, I just don't freak out about it or correct them. And if they call me she, I also don't freak out or correct them. I just let people take me as they see me. Mm-hmm. I had a Washington Post op-ed a couple of years ago, and what I thought was going to happen is that it was going to sink into obscurity pretty quickly and that a few people would read it. But what happened is that after it was published, it was the most read article on the whole of the Washington Post website for almost 48 hours.
Wow.
And all of my managers at work read it. So I am the most well-known sexually dysfunctional person at my company.
Okay, how did you know that all your managers read it? Did somebody kind of tell you at the water cooler, or like how'd you find that out? Oh,
a number of managers came up to me and said, "I read your article and it was really, really good." It's like, "Oh, thank you." Crap, yeah. Thank you.
Shooty.
I did have a couple of colleagues after that happened say, "I just want to know how to refer to you so that you're comfortable," which is kind, I suppose.
Did you say adult human weirdo, please? And my pronouns are weirdy and weird they or something like that?
I wish I had, but here's my answer now. And,
what did you answer?
And I'll tell you because this comes up in a couple of contexts now. Is when people say, "How should I refer to you?" I push back now a little bit. Oh gosh, I'm sorry to digress, but let me bring up. There's an essay written by Ophelia Benson.
It's like a cliffhanger, but keep going.
It is. We'll come back to that, I promise. Ophelia Benson wrote a fantastic essay about why women should not have pronouns in their signatures.
Oh, I'd like to read that.
It's worth finding. I'll see if I can send you a copy after
Brilliant.
this.
Please do. We'll try and put it in the notes.
Her point is that women signal their compliance by putting their signatures in their pronouns in their signatures. And men don't do this typically. Very few men put their pronouns into their signature. And this is a way for men to signal non-compliance. So compliance and non-compliance is all about power.
Yeah.
So my thought, and I try to encourage the women who I work with to not put their pronouns in their bio for these reasons. But I like to throw it back at people, and when they say, "How should I call you?" or "What pronouns do you want?" I say that you are the owner of your speech, and you should decide what to call me. And I'm okay with whatever you decide. Mm-hmm. But I want you to be the owner of your speech, ownership. So you pick. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to rub that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think too, like, I don't remember if I heard you say this to me in conversation or through interviews, but like I've heard you talk about, I want people to use the language that's kind of like reflexive for them or authentic for them or genuine for them or something like that. And that's so true, because we've talked on our show about how this gender stuff puts up so many barriers to actually connecting. If you want to connect in an authentic way, you shouldn't be like thinking about every single word that's going to come out of your mouth. You should just speak and give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Like, we'll be able to go back and forth and figure out where we're going. So that is so helpful too. It's just such a genuine way to be in the world, to give people that freedom.
That is an issue, I think, and that's why some people get very hostile around pronouns. And, you know, I can see their reason is that they feel the person whose pronouns are no longer intuitive impose themselves into the brain of people who don't want to think or need to think any further than a grammar, you know, a grammar syntax. Like, so it's an imposition of suddenly I have to change, I have to think, I have to rearrange, and now I'm thinking about this person more than I actually needed to. And that can, I think, generate a lot of hostility. It feels like an imposition. There was something, I met you in last year, it was over a year ago, I'd say about 16, 17 months ago, yourself, Corinna, and we were in County Clare in Doolin in a pub, and it was a lovely old person's pub, and it was a lovely pub, and it was a lovely afternoon. Oh no, it's just really nice, one of those afternoons.
Old person's pub, like a geriatric pub.
Well, in Ireland, you'd very much have a kind of, it's called an old lads pub, but like it would be a certain vibe of the pub, if you follow me.
Yeah,
you know there's going to be older people there and stuff. And I would have considered you, I don't know if you've changed since, but I would have considered you quite female presenting. And then there was a moment, we'd had something to eat, we'd had a couple of pints, naturally people want to go to the toilet, and you suddenly looked very worried because you kind of thought, what toilet am I meant to go into? And I thought, if you went in this pub, if you'd gone into the men's toilets, there'd be a riot. Like, it really would not have gone down well in this pub. It would have been an imposition on everybody almost. So it gave me the realpolitik of the questions of choosing the trans life, of being trans. And I thought, wow, it gives you so much more brain ache. I remember just looking at you thinking, God, it kind of, as Alistair said, it's the invisible twin. It's there, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm changing some of my habits now. So there may very well be strangers who take me to be a female in public, but more and more I'm using men's facilities. And the reason that I'm doing that is that I think that there needs to be just one consistent policy now. And that there are so many people who call themselves trans or trans women who are asserting that they have rights to access female spaces. And I think this is particularly terrible in places like changing rooms, where young women are being required to change in front of men. I think that there has to be one policy. And if I'm creating carve-outs for myself, I can't reasonably ask everybody who identifies as trans to... it used to be my policy was create the least amount of disruption. Go with the flow.
Yeah, I hear you. And now you've moved to saying actually.
I don't think that I can be consistent and assert that there's a space for passing trans women, and for non-passing trans women, go use the men's room. I think that we have to lead by example and show that that's not a good policy. Like we have to show that it's okay. So sorry, lads.
Or you're welcome, lads, depending on how you look at it. I want to ask, so we talked a little bit about how you personally, in some small context, like talk about your experience with gender. But I'm curious when you're talking, like, let's say, because this is called dinner party conversations, right? So let's say you're invited to a dinner party. Maybe you know a couple of the people there, not all the people there, and gender comes up. Do you have any particular tips for listeners or ways that you can suggest that could be helpful to talk about this? And I'm curious if you do the whole, like, well, as a transsexual, like my perspective is, or do you try to just be really non-identity politics about it when you do talk about gender?
It's really tough, especially now because more and more of my friends are having their children are being pulled into genderland with very, to me, sort of strange and very unrelatable polls, right?
Yeah.
It's not unusual at all. I have multiple friends where this situation is true, that they have children who have these unstable personalities or identities. Very frequently, I guess this is maybe just the age, but they're naming themselves after either video game characters or gods or goddesses from other cultures. Just hilarious to me in a way. Like
Vishnu, have you had your
right neo pronouns, and so it can be tense, it can be terse, but I say that I just don't think that it's possible for anybody to change sex. I tried, I couldn't do it. And I don't think it's really fair to tell these kids that they can. And I don't really go into it too much more than that.
Yeah.
But it's obviously, you know, if you're at a dinner party and you say something like that, it's a little bit like putting your feet up on the table. It's not welcomed.
No.
Yeah. That's a very direct and bold way to lead into the conversation. But that's powerful because you can kind of share your own experience in like one sentence. It's pretty incredible, actually. I imagine most of our listeners won't be able to say something like that. Have you heard anybody else kind of effectively talk about this? Like, I remember when we were in Killarney, Laura Becker, the young woman who detransitioned, she had this incredible kind of like framing that she didn't even use the word gender. She said something like, this is a question about medical ethics and identity or something like that. And it was a very like non-confrontational way of leading into the discussion. Though I think your point is a lot more direct.
Yeah, that's characteristic bluntness. It's really difficult in some of my social circles right now, just because I do have that sort of matter-of-fact viewpoint on it. I'll tell you, I really fractured a friendship rather recently. You want to hear about that?
Yeah.
So there's a legislation that I testified on in Indiana earlier this year that was a ban on medical procedures on minors for gender-related things. And a collection of various left-wing churches came together, and they led a prayer parade, I don't know what you'd call it, down the halls of the legislature on the way to the governor's office, singing and praying and don't pass this legislation because it's really, really important. God wants kids to change their sex, or whatever their point of view was. One of these leading pastors of this, or ministers, I apologize. I'm an atheist, so sometimes I struggle with all of the right vocabulary for this group. One of the leaders of this is a church that some friends of mine go to. And I was frankly really pissed off that a bunch of clergy were coming in and bringing their religious view into the legislature and politicizing it. And so I made a sign against a transgender flag. I put the words, "Kids cannot change sex," and I went to their church. And it was Palm Sunday, and I didn't realize that it was Palm Sunday. And held the sign outside of the church, and I brought copies of my Washington Post article with me so that if anybody was interested, they could learn more of my perspective. And understandably, I wasn't doing this to insult my friends, but I felt like it was really important that if a church is going to politicize this issue, then and bring their praying into the legislature, that they shouldn't be surprised if somebody on the other side shows up and brings the politics to their church.
And so your friendship kind of dissolved after this?
I think it has. It seems like it has, yeah.
That's too bad. What a strange little concentrated example of where we're at in 2023. That a church is protesting so that kids can be medicalized for sex change. And a transsexual woman, Corinna Cohn, shows up like fighting the church. Like what in the world is happening? That's so remarkable.
Yeah. Just before we finish, could you just tell us a little bit about your name journey?
Oh yeah.
Just so
my name journey.
Yeah.
Name
Goodness
journey.
gracious.
Hashtag YouTube.
Please don't call it a journey. Oh no.
When I was on my name journey. Okay.
There's this video game I really like, so I want you to call me Laura Croft. No. I adopted a more feminized version of my name, which if I'd been paying attention at the time that I transitioned, I should have realized I already had a fairly gender neutral name.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Which is Corey, right?
Corey, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I would see it quite a feminine name. Like, it's not common in Ireland.
It's more common in the United States. I think probably for every 4 boys that have the name Corey, there's 1 girl that has the name Corey. So here it's more masculine and feminine, but it's not exactly unusual for women to be called Corey. I should say it's rare, but it's not like unknown.
Mm-hmm.
When I started taking tennis lessons, I signed up, and there's a question that as part of like the registration form that said, "What is your gender?" And the drop down said male or female. And I thought, well, do you mean what is my sex? But it's a drop down form. I have to fill this out. And I'm like, well, people who see me are going to assume that most people who see me assume that I'm female. I'm going to put female here, not knowing, because it's a mixed sex class, like it's males and females. So I'm like, all right, fine, I'll put F there. That's what my ID says, because it obviously makes me a woman if my ID says it. Yeah, piece of paper has a magical powers that way. So I started going to this class in 2021. In 2022, I gave this support in the legislation for separating cutting men out of women's sports. Really, actually, it doesn't mention anything about trans people in the bill. It just says women's sports. You have to be a woman to participate. And so when I went back for more tennis lessons, what I thought was, all right, if I'm going to ever get out of lessons and start competing in leagues, I want to compete against men, not women. And in order for people to like click over a little bit more and see me as male, I'm just going to start introducing myself as Corey instead of Corinna, and see if that helps other people like click over a little bit and not be shocked if I'm competing against men. And I also started attending a group for a dinner party that's held in the city for gay men. And I wanted, in that context, to go by Corey instead of Corinna, so that, for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of contexts now where I'm okay with people calling me Corey. I consider it more of a diminutive than like a name that I'm going back to. But
okay.
I
don't know where I first came across, because I've always known you just as Corinna, and then I either overheard something or saw something, and I was like, what is the deal with this? So in most contexts, Corinna is still how people know you, except for these kind of two places.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But feel free to call me either. I'm
okay, Either. Well, thank you so much, Either, for joining us. Dad jokes.
I walked right into that.
I had to take it. Yeah, this is really interesting, and I actually think these dinner party conversations are going to be helpful. But the truth is, it is hard to talk about this stuff offline. I mean, it's hard online, but it's even harder offline.
At one of these dinners for gay men, there's unfortunately like genders and everything now, and one of the gentlemen who was there, who I'm sure I left a poor impression on. He's a volunteer at one of the youth groups, and he was telling me that, oh yeah, gender's like all the whole thing for all the kids that go there. It's not, these youth groups are not for gay or lesbian kids anymore. It's all through the lens of gender. Even for the gay and lesbian kids, it's all through gender. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, well, it's too bad that for the young men who are going to this, that there's people there that are trying to encourage them to cut their dicks off. And
subtle.
Yeah, it is subtle.
Gentle.
But yeah, that's my style.
Fragrant and feminine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, keep going.
So demure.
I think you took a little bit of exception to the comment, because the way that I phrased it was not too far away from being an accusation.
Yeah.
But I have a very low tolerance right now. Maybe I'll get over it, but I have a lot of frustration at these enablers.
Yeah, but you can say it. You are one of the few people who can actually say that. And so I think sometimes something has to be said in youth clubs. Something has to be said. Yeah, I'm glad you said it.
I think probably a lot of adults, well-meaning adults, think that anyone who goes through transition is going to be so much happier, and it always works out perfectly, and there's never any issue. So I think that is another kind of societal misleading misinformation that we've got going on.
And I've worked in those youth clubs, and the mentality is we're just nodding along. These are just at the beginning of an exploration. There's going to be so many checks and balances and hurdles for these kids, and we're just at the very beginning, just being kind and letting them explore. And it's like you have no idea, literally no idea how instrumental you are at this point.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of misinformation.
Maybe I'll borrow that one-liner about cutting dicks off, and I'll just say, well, Corinna Cohn said I could say this. Yeah. Not that you ever did. I'll just pretend.
You can. You have my permission. But it's Corey Cohn, not Corinna Cohn.
Corey Cohn.
Yeah, there you go.
Corey Cohn said.
Cohn.
In the gay
like
dinner club,
which
is another, it's a very strange, at the gay dinner club, Corey Cohn said. I'll say that whole line.
Stop helping young men to go down the road to having their dicks cut off.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was lovely. And I think dinner party conversations are over.
Thanks.
Invite me to your dinner party, please. I promise I won't put my feet up on the table.
We'll see you in Denver. And we'll throw you out a few choice questions.
It'll be one to remember, I'm sure.
Surely, always is. All right, thank you.
Thank you for being part of our listener community. Your financial support helps to make all of this possible.
For more ways to support the show, please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment on our episodes, and of course, spread the word about joining the paid community and all the exclusive content you can find there.
And for more information, please visit widerlenspod.com.